start of a new school year, Sky Watchers. If you find emotional support from cute cuddlies, then today's void is for you. In a bit, we're going to discover a brief history of animals that have been or that are currently exploring space, in addition to also clearing up some recent rumors about governmental admission of alien life. Spoiler, they didn't. Let's begin by transporting outside and look it up. It's Tuesday, August 8, 2023, just a few minutes past noon. Like last month, we can spot the moon in today's sky, currently in the waning crescent phase, decreasing in light from last Tuesday's full supermoon. When a moon occurs at perigee, its closest point to the Earth in regular orbit, the moon can appear as much as 8% bigger and 16% brighter in what is sometimes called a supermoon. When two full moons happen within the same month, the second is referred to as a blue moon. If a blue moon occurs at perigee, then the resultant phenomenon can be called a super blue moon. And that is exactly what will happen at the end of this month as we transition from the night of the 30th into the morning of the 31st. Supermoons are somewhat common, as there will be a total of 4 in 2023, whereas blue moons occur about every 33 months. The next time a super blue moon will happen won't be for another 9 years in the year 2032. Following the moon, sitting past the horizon in this evening's sky are the Sun, then Venus, Mercury, and Mars. The latter three all gathered around the region of mighty Leo the Lion, though the light of the former will likely wash out viewing opportunities for all but Mars. Continuing on, we can find not Mars, the red giant Antares as the Heart, and Scorpius the Scorpion crawling out of the noctilucent clouds for a few more months before disappearing to make way for winter's Orion the Hunter. On the opposite side of the Milky Way core is Aquarius the water bearer, tonight also bearing gas giant Saturn. Aquarius is Latin for water carrier, and occupies a region of space sometimes referred to as the sea, given the presence of other water-centric patterns like Cetus the whale, Pisces the fish, and Eridanus the river. As one of the oldest identified constellations, during the early Bronze Age, the vase of Aquarius was seen as containing the winter solstice, which was poured out annually. Babylonians and Egyptians associated the constellation with flooding. Chinese astronomy interprets the flowing water with celestial soldiers known as the Army of Yulin. The ancient Greeks, from whom the Romans ultimately won out naming rights, may have interpreted Aquarius as Ganymede, a hero from Troy described as the most beautiful of mortals. He was so handsome that Zeus transformed into an eagle and caught him up to the heavens to serve as cupbearer to the gods. To this day, Aquila the eagle looms just above Aquarius in the sky. Contemporary observers can marvel at the prevalence of deep space objects located within the bounds of Aquarius, including 12 different exoplanet systems. Whether or not any of these planets support life is yet to be known. For that matter, we don't yet know for certain if there even is life off Earth. However, you might have recently heard something different on social media. 2 weeks ago, 3 past US military officials testified before a congregational subcommittee concerning UAPs, unidentified anomalous phenomena, previously identified as UFOs. Without the support of additional evidence, the officials provided first and second-hand eyewitness testimony of experiences with UAPs. One official including that a responsibility of their division was to attempt to reverse engineer recovered vessels. A point that was repeatedly emphasized is the belief that these unidentified anomalous phenomena are not so much extraterrestrial as just alien, that is, from another country. Therefore, the officials recommended an increase in ease of access and reporting UAPs, as well as an increased interest in their ongoing investigation for the possible sake of national security. An additional statement has been circulating about the discovery of non-human biologics on UAPs. To that notion, I say Earthlings have been sending non-human biologics into space for the past 76 years, and there's no plan to stop anytime soon. Last month, the Chinese space program announced plans to send a school of zebrafish to its orbiting laboratory, the Tiangong space station. In addition to studying fish behavior in a small closed ecosystem, this experiment hopes to provide insight into bone loss among astronauts. This is not the first time aquatic life has been sent off-world. In 2012, NASA's Aquatic Habitat, or AQH, was sent to the International Space Station to study how microgravity impacts marine life. It hosted a school of Madoka, a small freshwater Japanese fish. The first animals to reach space were fruit flies, launched by the United States in 1947. 2 years later, Albert II, a rhesus monkey, became the first known mammal in space. It took another 8 years for the first animal to orbit Earth. That title belongs to Laika, a dog launched by the Soviet space program. You may be familiar with primate and canine space exploration, but here are 8 more astronomic organisms you may have yet to discover. 6 years after Laika, the French space program flung the first cat into the heavens. Felicite was a Parisian street cat that survived her trip to space and back. The same can't be said for Laika and Albert's 1 through 5. Felicite's brain was later examined to study the neurological effects of spaceflight. In 1968, a pair of Russian tortoises became the first Earthlings to successfully orbit the moon as a step in the ever-advancing space race between the US and Soviet space programs. After the 7-day round trip, the reptiles landed in the Indian Ocean before also having their buddies examined for any effects from their travel. The MUMMICHOG, also known as the Atlantic killifish or mud minnows, are a small but hardy fish known for their survival abilities in extreme conditions. In 1973, NASA included a pair in its Skylab 3 mission to study motion and microgravity. In absence of familiar G-forces, the fish were capable of swimming, but did so in an unusual way, constantly pitching forward and swimming in tight circles. That was until astronauts utilized a light to act as a stand-in for the sun to assist the fish in orienting themselves. When 48 of the 50 fish eggs that accompanied the adults hatched, these new MUMMICHOG did not exhibit the same looping behavior, but instead followed more traditional swimming patterns. This led to the theory that the fry had already acclimated to a life in low gravity. Swimming is one thing, but what about construction? Also in 1973, scientists sent 2 spiders into space to discover how the formation of their webs would be affected by microgravity. Well, at first less than refrigerator door worthy, after several days of attempts, the spiders improved their webs to gallery quality. Both the arachnids and the MUMMICHOG demonstrated that the ability to adapt to microgravity was not limited to humans. Superhuman adaptation was all the rage in the early 1990s, partly due to the success of Marvel's X-Men, the animated series. Replicating the abilities of one extremely popular mutant, the Iberian ribbed newt is a species of amphibian that can extend its sharp-tipped rib bones out through its skin to deter would-be predators. The newt can retract its rib bones and fully heal from this behavior. Its notorious regenerative ability resulted in a team of Russian and German scientists launching a group of newts into space in the early 1990s. Prior to launch, a collection of Iberian ribbed newts underwent a procedure to alter their neural retinas. A group of those altered newts was sent into orbit for 2 weeks while the rest remained on planet. All of the newts were then given treatment and monitored for the regeneration of their retinas. The discovery? Those newts in orbit regenerated cells faster than those that remained on Earth. This has led some scientists to question if humans can also heal faster in low gravity, but more study is needed. During NASA's first Spacelab Life Sciences mission in 1991, the Space Shuttle Columbia launched with a package of over 2,000 jellyfish pods. Over the course of the mission, those jellyfish reproduced to a population of 60,000 jellies. In somewhat of a reversal of the MUMMICHOG experiment, the majority of these jellies had only known life in microgravity. They were eventually sent to Earth, and sure enough, they had difficulty moving on planet. Researchers theorized that sensory organs called otoliths did not fully develop in the orbiting jellyfish. Humans also use otoliths, located in the inner ear, to detect acceleration and gravity. Whether you prefer the nickname water bears or moss piglets, chances are you have heard of the nearly indestructible tardigrade. A tiny 8-legged micro-animal that can thrive in just a drop of water is one of the few animals that have been discovered on every continent on Earth, even Antarctica. They are also the only animal on this list that may, possibly, unlikely, but maybe, be alive on Earth. In 2007, the European Space Agency launched a satellite carrying 3,000 tardigrades on a 12-day space mission titled TARDIS, or Tardigrades in Space. The tardigrades are exposed to the open vacuum of space and direct cosmic radiation before later returning to Earth. Upon rehydration, tardigrades have the ability to enter a state of suspended animation where they turn into a dry ball called a ton. On rehydration, they puff back up to normal. Upon rehydration, the space tardigrades displayed no significant changes to their physiology or behavior. This has provided evidence that it is possible for living things to survive direct exposure to the harsh conditions of space. space. Tardigrades are currently on board the ISS for continued study, and there may be some inhabiting the moon. On April 2019, the Israeli space program accidentally crash-landed the spacecraft Perseid into the lunar surface. On board were several thousand tardigrades. In the very unlikely event that the tardigrades survive the crash, it is possible that some are still alive there now, more than likely dormant, until they too are fortunate enough to be rehydrated. Finally, looking towards the coming weekend, we'll have an opportunity to see things not launching up, but falling down into Earth's atmosphere during the peak of the Perseid meteor shower. During the night of the 12th and into the morning of the 13th, an average of 60 meteors an hour can be viewed during the peak of the Perseids that will have to compete with just a crescent moon for brightness, making Friday night and into Saturday morning a wonderful time, weather permitted, for viewing. Spacewalks will be the focus of next month's Void as we prepare for the September 24th return of NASA's OSIRIS-REx spacecraft, which will be bringing with it the very first return sample of an asteroid, the asteroid Bennu. We'll continue the discussion the second Tuesday of September, September the 12th. Thank you for joining me for today's discussion. Until next time, keep discovering. Bye.